Hi everyone, this video is one of two lecture videos for week 2. This is part 1 on work adjustment theory, which is covered in chapter 4 of our textbook. I do recommend you read the chapter first before watching this presentation if you can, as I'll just be giving you some of the highlights and key concepts, whereas reading the chapter will of course give you a much fuller context and understanding of the theory. Work adjustment theory was another one of the earliest theories that came into our field. It was developed by Renee Dawes and Lloyd Lofquist and others in the mid-1960s. It does fit very well with the trait and factor framework, and you'll see as we work through the presentation that it mirrors Parsons' three-step approach, which we learned about in week 1. Here's just a straightforward definition of work adjustment theory. It's a continuous and dynamic process by which a worker seeks to achieve and maintain correspondence with a work environment, and we will unpack what that means as we work through this presentation. So some basic ideas are that work adjustment theory examines the interaction between individuals and work environments. Workers are in a dynamic and evolving relationship with the work environment and must make continual adjustments to develop and maintain satisfaction. For example, learning new skills, adapting to a new management style, and so on. If you think back on a job or career that you've been in for some time and think about how it was at the very beginning and how you might have needed to adjust as you were in that role for a period of time. Did you have to learn new things? Did you have to adjust to new approaches being brought in, new technologies, new colleagues, and so on? So although we're not always aware of it, as we are in a role for any period of time, we are always, according to work adjustment theory, making continual adjustments. So a couple of other key concepts in this theory. The individual has needs, which we call traits, as part of the trait and factor theory of the work environment. And then the work environment has needs or requirements, what we referred to as factors in our week 1 lectures, of the worker. When both of these needs are met, in work adjustment theory, it is referred to as correspondence. So my needs for certain types of satisfaction in a role correspond to what the needs are of the role, and there is a fit there, and we refer to that as correspondence. Work adjustment theory says that correspondence occurs when the worker is both satisfied and satisfactory, and I'll unpack what those mean in a moment. Correspondence between these two things can lead to stability or tenure in the position, being able to stay in the role for a long time. And fit is a key concept in this theory, and you'll hear me refer to that very often, not just in this presentation, but in many other discussions of theories and how workers fit with their particular occupations or roles. So these two major components in work adjustment theory are satisfaction and satisfactoriness. Satisfaction refers to the individual, their experience of being satisfied with the work that they're doing. And satisfactoriness refers to the employer's satisfaction with the employee's performance. So if you think back on a role that you may have held for a long time in any other field, what was your level of satisfaction in that role? Did you feel happy about being there? Did it feel like it was a good fit for you? And then the other side of the coin is, how did your employer or your manager view your performance? Did they see your performance as effective and that they were satisfied with what you were doing? And so again, we want to look for a match between these two things when we are examining an individual's choice of occupation. So I mentioned previously that this model corresponds nicely to Frank Parsons' model, the three steps that he refers to as who am I, what's out there, and how do I get there. The who am I step referring to an individual's abilities, their skills, their values, their personality, and interests. This particular theory emphasizes more heavily abilities and values. Abilities can include aptitudes or predicted skills or current skills that they may have. Values include needs for satisfying certain guiding principles that are important to the individual. We'll talk about that in a moment. The theory also considers personality and interests, but in this model, these are not emphasized as being as important as abilities and values. But all of these aspects can be uncovered using assessment tools or other methods you'll learn in this course and other courses throughout the program. If we start here by looking at abilities or skills, these may be assessed using a wide range of tools to identify an individual's aptitudes and skills. Now, when you're in a job, you often bring a certain set of skills. That's usually why you're hired, but those needs can sometimes change. And skills can be acquired over time to meet the requirements of the task to improve fit, satisfaction, and satisfactoriness in a job. And employers may sometimes offer training that they feel will generally address skill gaps for employees and areas that could improve fit and satisfaction and satisfactoriness. As one example, in my role at the college, I've noticed that over the last year or two, there have been many offerings for professional development on the subject of artificial intelligence and using that as part of our approach as faculty. So there are often changes as years go on if you stay in a role long enough that different types of skills or a strengthening of certain skills may be required. And that's something that you might want to look at when you're working with clients, how perhaps have skill requirements changed in the field that they're interested in. A second aspect of this is values. Now, this is a harder concept to wrap our head around, but values are principles that guide our lives, and but we're often unaware of them. They're often more fixed and permanent. It's not that our values can't change the way abilities can, but often they are a fixed part of our personality. So again, hard to get your head maybe wrapped around this concept. We don't, for example, let's say you have a value of being an honest person, but you don't get up in the morning and say, I'm going to follow my value of honesty today. However, you might be walking down the street, you see somebody drop a $20 bill, you pick it up and run after them to give it back. And again, you don't walk away thinking, there, I honored my value of honesty, but you might walk away feeling good because you honored a principle that is embedded in your personality and part of who you are. There are different value frameworks that you can look at, but within work adjustment theory, they have 6 value scales, and we'll unpack all of these and just look at them in turn. And I do encourage you to read in the chapter a bit more detail and description of each of these, but I'll give you just a little snapshot of each one. So, a value of achievement refers to using one's abilities and having a feeling of accomplishment. For many of us, that's important in a job to feel that I have the skills to use in this role and I'm able to apply them effectively. So, I gain a sense of achievement, and that enhances my sense of satisfaction. Value of comfort means feeling comfortable and not being stressed. For example, some people like being in a fast-paced, quickly changing work environment, and they want that stimulation every day. Others may feel like they don't want that kind of stimulation. They want to feel comfortable and relaxed in their job and not being stressed. So that's a difference in values, but some people can feel comfortable in that highly stressed environment. So it's really up to how we define the idea of comfort. The value of status is the idea of being given recognition and also being in a dominant position. So being in a role where people recognize you for what you do and that you have some level of influence or control in that position, maybe to influence other people's actions. So status can be important to some people as a value as part of their work. Altruism refers to having harmony with and being of service to others. So people who are altruistic are often thinking about other people and want to do work that allows them quite often to make a difference in the lives of others. And this may be a value for you because you've chosen to come in to this program where you can, in fact make a big difference in the lives of your clients by helping them. Another value is the idea of safety that refers to stability, order, and predictability, feeling like you know what's going to happen every day, that maybe your days follow a predictable pattern, you know what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and so on. And then lastly, the concept of autonomy, being independent and having a sense of control. For people, when this value is important to them, they most likely don't want to be in a role where a manager is standing over them all day long, telling them exactly what to do. They like being able to go off and do their own thing and execute what they feel needs to be done in the job. So you might think about these 6 values yourself. Think about occupations or jobs you've been in that you really enjoyed, that were a good fit for you, or maybe that, and so in those cases, probably some of these values were being satisfied, or that you were not very happy in, and perhaps you had a value from this list that was not being satisfied. We also want to think about personality, how an individual interacts with their work setting. This includes 4 work behaviors that are described in the theory: celerity, pace, rhythm, and endurance. Celerity refers to the quickness or speed with which workers engage in their work environment to satisfy their needs and those of the employer. So sometimes an individual has the skill to do something, but they can't quite do it at the pace or the speed that I shouldn't have, sorry, I should not have used the word pace because that's confusing. They might not be able to execute the duties of the role at the speed that the employer would like to see. Pace refers to the effort spent in working. So, does the individual come to the job in the morning kind of psyched and ready to get going, and puts themselves, into the role and expends a lot of effort in doing it? Rhythm refers to the pattern of the pace and the interaction between the individual and the work. So, there are often natural ebbs and flows throughout the workday that are evident in the way you approach your work. Maybe you come in the morning and really, really work hard, and your morning's your peak time. And as you get closer to the lunch break, maybe there's a little bit of an ebb there that your energy's dropping. You need to have some lunch. You need to have some food or take a break. So that kind of refers to the rhythm. And then endurance is the tolerance by the worker of the environment, or how long the worker remains in the environment. So basically, how long can you go at the job without feeling like you need to take a break? How long can you be in a job with feeling like I have to get out of this job? This is just not working for me. So those are the 4 characteristics that work adjustment theory sees as part of personality style. And then lastly, interests. We explored the importance of interests as part of Frank Parsons' model. And although this theory emphasized interests a bit less than abilities, values, and personality, research has shown that identifying interests is an essential step in choosing careers that are a good fit. So we do want to emphasize interests just as equally as we emphasize these other factors. We think back on step 2 in Frank Parsons' model. This refers to the what's out there idea, looking at the requirements and conditions of occupations. So again, work environments, of course, have needs or requirements of the individual worker, and workers choose jobs because they perceive the job can meet their needs. Employers choose workers because they perceive the worker has the needs to meet the needs of the workplace. So when you enter into a job, you take a job, there's perceptions on both sides that this would be a fit. It refers back to the concepts of fit and there's an expectation of both satisfaction by the worker and satisfactoriness by the employer. So we want to make sure when we're helping clients make career choices that there's a good match between all of these aspects, and that they are going to be both satisfied and satisfactory in the work. Step 3, this refers to Frank Parsons' third step of how do I get there, setting goals to match abilities, interests, personality, and interests with the work environment. And part of the theory refers to the idea of adjustment style. This describes the degree of fit between the person and the environment. If the person can adjust to the environment, then we have a strong adjustment style. And many factors can influence adjustment style, including characteristics, gender, cultural background, many other things. The theory describes 4 qualities that describe this fit. And let's have a look at those. Briefly, flexibility refers to the ability to tolerate unpleasant or difficult aspects of work. These may be temporary or permanent aspects. And, someone working, let's say, in a very loud warehouse or factory environment may be able to tolerate that more effectively than other people might. Activeness refers to the degree to which the person will try to change the environment if it is dissatisfying. So, again, that example of working in a loud environment, maybe the individual starts to wear earplugs or gets a headset or something that kind of blocks out those unpleasant aspects. Reactiveness refers to the degree to which the person may try to change themselves. And so again, putting in earplugs is not exactly changing your personality, but it is changing, your reactiveness to that noisy environment. And then perseverance refers to how long the person can tolerate a dissatisfying job before making changes. So after some time in the job, the person might start to think, I just didn't realize how noisy it was going to be working in this environment, and I need to look for another option. It's just too much for me. So, some reasons for using adjustment counseling. Why might we apply this to our work with clients? Well, clients may have a gap in skills. They may not have developed the skills or traits to meet the job requirements, which again are factors. Or perhaps the job is requiring a stronger set of skills that the person did not bring, or it's requiring new types of skills that the individual didn't need at the beginning. And this may be due to lack of education or ability, or a number of other reasons. Or the work environment, the factors may have changed. Maybe there's a completely different management approach, or a completely something that's just maybe the individual worked in a very quiet environment. Maybe they even had their own workspace where they could close the door, and now everybody's being moved to an open environment where there are no walls. That's a pretty significant change in work environment, and some people might not be able to adjust to that. Often the person's values or needs are not being met by the work environment, so they have low satisfaction. So if someone is coming to you and not happy with their work and wants to find a new job, there may be something about their values or needs that is not being satisfied, or the person is not perceived by management as succeeding in the role, so they have low satisfactoriness. In other words, I really like my job, but my manager is always on my case and doesn't seem to be happy with the work that I'm doing. So you want to try and unpack, what that might be about. And maybe it is the manager, or maybe it is the worker, or maybe it's a combination of the two. When you're applying this model in a counseling process, you want to identify discrepancies in satisfaction and satisfactoriness. So, is the poor fit related to abilities, values, personality, or skills, or a changing environment, or a combination of the two? Do cultural differences play a role? For example, different understandings of the idea of teamwork. Quite often in the Canadian environment, the idea of teamwork is that we help each other, we pitch in. If someone is overwhelmed with work, we step up and help that person. It's not true in every Canadian work environment, but in many it is. Whereas an individual may have come from a work environment where, in a different culture, where to offer to help somebody is actually considered insulting. And the individual might feel like, are you suggesting I can't do my job? So that individual may bring that understanding, and it may cause a difficulty if they're working in an environment where everybody is just expected to spontaneously pitch in and help. So this theory can be applied across cultures, but the instruments to assess people's interests, values, skills, and so on may not be valid. And certainly we'll talk about that over and over again in the course. The idea of selecting tools that are appropriate for the client. So some key concepts, just to wrap this up, are the idea of adjustment and adjustment style, the person-environment fit, the idea of correspondence, and the idea of satisfaction versus satisfactoriness. Those are all key concepts in this particular model. So in summary, an individual's abilities, values, personality, and interests must fit with the work environment and role to increase their chances of tenure in a role, so that the employer is satisfied with them and the individual is satisfied with the role. Every work role requires some ongoing adjustment as the environment and needs of the role change. And this would be something you would explore with clients if they are currently employed, or they left a job because they weren't satisfied with it. These are the things that you want to explore. So we apply this theory with clients to understand where the gaps might be in their fit and formulate a plan to close those gaps, or identify a different occupation that is a better fit. So thanks for watching. Again, don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions at all, and please go on to watch part 2 of this week's lectures on Holland's theory of types.